Good evening. I'd like to call this special session to order. Please stand and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we welcome all of you coming out here this evening. Obviously, most everybody knows, everyone knows why we're here this evening. The Department of Ed and the Governor's Office has required before any school corporation seeks any kind of reentry or in-person instruction this fall, that your reentry plan must be adopted by two bodies or approved by two bodies. One, the County Health Department, and the second is the Board of Trustees. So we have provided our draft. The corporations provided our draft on the website last Thursday for the public to review. That has been approved in its current form by the Health Department, Vermillion County Health Department. So tonight, what we will do is Mr. Chapman will present the reentry plan that a lot of work has gone into. The task force, and I think will you share with us the task force members in your presentation, Mr. Chapman? Thank you. Many hours went into this. A lot of folks participated, some of them in the audience tonight. We certainly as a board appreciate the effort that has literally moved a mountain in the last 30 days after the DOE released their guidelines. The format we're going to follow tonight is we're actually, as a board, we're going to come out in the audience and watch with you, socially distanced, the presentation that Mr. Chapman is going to make regarding the task force recommendation and plan for reentry in the fall. And then we'll come back up here as a board and take your comment, any citizen comment that would like to address the plan that's been presented. Then we'll take, of course, any board member comment, and then we'll proceed towards consideration of the recommendation. So any questions from the board before we move on? Okay, so board members, we're going to exit out to the audience and gather, find you a seat, and we'll turn it over to Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. You can hear me okay? All right. Before I begin, I just want to acknowledge the members of the task force that have been part of this project. Melanie Beaver, our curriculum director, Jenny Fossey, our IT director, Jay Suzuka, our assistant technology specialist, Cindy Nguyen, business manager, Stephanie Farrington, personnel payroll manager, Mark Schimmel, principal at the high school, Rodney Idleline, assistant principal at the high school, Tim Terry, athletic director at the high school, Angie Harris, middle school principal, Michael Williams, assistant principal, middle school, Ryan Jenkins, Central Elementary Principal, Kim Kessler, Bernie Pyle, Principal, Ron Foster, Van Dyne, Principal, Kayla Ferguson and Mandy Allen, Elementary Counselors, Hannah Hoover, Corporation Nurse and our Director of Health Services, Kim Bryant, Food Service Director, Michelle Baguetto, Transportation Director, Steve Marietta, Maintenance Director, Melanie Luther, Head Custodian here at the high school, Jackie Roberts Cole, SVA President and Secondary Representative, Cheryl Crockett, Elementary Teacher Representative, Bruce West, Board Member Representative, Wendy Farley, Vermillion County Health Department, Megan Costello, Elementary Parent, and Kristen Craig, Secondary Parent Representative, and we also have Gary Hanner serving as our legal counsel resource. Those are members of the task force. The South Vermillion Community School Corporation
Jason, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Screen?
In just a second. Yep.
Here it comes. Well, as I do my introduction, we'll wait for this reading. The South Vermillion Community School Corporation Reentry Task Force was assembled with a commitment to ensure that a safe and healthy learning environment for our students and our staff to return to school. To that end, the South Vermillion Task Force has developed a strategic plan to reopen our schools with students returning on August 10th, 2020. During the process, the main focus remained consistent, assuring that our students and staff's health and safety were our top priority. And as we prepare for this new normal to our education environment, we must remain vigilant to this. As we look toward the reopening of school and what the new in teaching and learning will look like, the task force has put together a strategy that will provide effective educational opportunities for all. The South Vermillion Reentry Plan provides the opportunity for all students to return to their school, while at the same time having the flexibility to meet the needs of students and staff who may be vulnerable due to health concerns related to the COVID-19. The task force was developed with a cross-section of stakeholders to assure varied perspectives were addressed throughout the process. Experience and expertise of those involved provided valuable input as the plan was developed. An important part of the process was to gain perspective from employees and families of the school corporation. Survey results were utilized from parents, teachers, and support staff to help formulate our reentry plan. As that plan came into focus, guidance from the Center for Communicable Diseases, the Indiana State Department of Health, the Indiana Department of Education, and the Vermillion County Health Department were utilized in the final plan for safely bringing our students and staff back to school. So as we plan for the reopening of our schools in a safe, yet as traditional as possible setting on Monday, August 10th, there are many modifications in the protocols in response to the guidance from our local, state, and national health officials. In support of our students, staff, and their families, and to comply with federal, state, and local recommendations, the South Vermillion Community School Corporation Reentry Task Force has developed a comprehensive reentry plan. This plan has been shared with our community on the South Vermillion website, and we are asking every stakeholder to help with preventative efforts while at school and school facilities, as well as at home. In order to minimize the spread of the COVID-19 in school, everyone in our school community must play their part. As stated, South Vermillion Schools will institute protocols to strengthen hygiene practices for students and staff, ensure appropriate social distancing when necessary, facilitate contact tracing, and support individual students and staff needs. The following presentation of protocols are based on principles of epidemiology, infection control, and align with currently known best practices and guidelines. Please note that this presentation is somewhat of an overview of approximately 40 pages of policies, procedures, protocols, and guidelines that the task force established. For a detailed review of the reentry plan, I simply ask those in the audience and families to log on to our website and click the coronavirus COVID-19 link where the plan is located. So now for our reentry plan. Our focus is really simple, and that's to provide recommendations and considerations to reopen schools while mitigating any risk factors that might be involved. Maximize the amount of time students are physically in school while balancing local health officials' recommendations. And to provide a virtual learning option to meet the needs of families who are affected by the COVID-19. Also to allow for contingency plans based on the virus spread. And prepare flexible plans based on the local conditions. Now, one of the things that we'll get into is we're going to take a look at our local conditions as it relates to Vermillion County and how it relates across the state. And one of the things I want to bring to your attention is we're looking at a three-tiered approach. And we kind of use the stoplight approach. If you've seen the news lately, you've probably seen other school districts use this similar type of photo here, I guess. Green is the good,
yellow is, and red is not so good. Right now, we're in a pattern of no to low spread, but that doesn't mean in 2 weeks' time, we won't be looking at a yellow vantage point being a minimal to moderate spread. And that will be determined between the local health department and the school corporation as to what needs to be done at that point. If we get into a red category, which is a substantial spread, it's pretty cut and dry what we need to do there, at least based on one school or corporation-wide. So those are the three areas. And right now we're looking at the green. So we're going to focus on that right now. And what we want to do is manage the risk while we're reopening schools. We know very well that today in Vermillion County, we have since this whole thing started, we've had 14 positive tests out of approximately 813, I think it was, individuals who were tested. That positivity rate is 1.7%. And when you look at the state positivity rate, you're looking at 9.3%. So Vermillion County is doing a pretty good job of maintaining a good, open concept as far as doing their due diligence. So managing that risk while reopening our schools is a big component here. And we are relying heavily on the Vermillion County Health Department. We're in constant contact daily. We need to maintain a watchful eye on the local community spread. I get the update from the State Department of Health every day, and I update my data for that. We have to look at what is realistic and what is feasible for our school corporation, for our community. It has to be acceptable to you, our stakeholders, and understanding that depending on whether your families, whether your staff, local community health officials, we need to look at those varying points of view. The first piece of information that we had to take into account was the guidance from the Indiana Department of Education, their in-class. And I put this on here because this is a direct quote from that guidance. Considerations of how we are going to reopen and all that are based on recommendations and or statute. And it says, due to capacity and resource limitations, not all districts and schools will be able to address or implement all the considerations listed in that document. The authority as to when and how to reopen schools rests with the local school boards with the advice from the county health department. The authority to close schools rests with the county health departments with the advice from the local school districts. So as you can see, the school corporation and the county health department have to work hand in hand and stay in constant communication to assure that we're doing what's best for our school community. In light of this new pandemic environment, communities must understand three key factors. One, the school's ability to maintain a safe and healthy school environment. Two, the prevalence of COVID-19 in our community. And three, what parents and the community are willing to support. And that's locally defined district by district. So a few weeks ago, we sent out surveys. Nothing greatly scientific, but we just felt we needed to get the pulse from our parents and our families. So a couple of questions I want to throw to you that we sent out. One was, how likely are you to send your children to school if we open as scheduled on August 10th in the traditional full-day format? 68.5% said they were very likely to send their kids to school. Another 22.5% said somewhat likely. And only about 9% said not at all. And that was based on almost 600 responses. Then we asked if social distancing requirements are in place on the school bus. Is busing a necessity for your children? 53% said no, it's not a necessity, and almost 47% said yes, it is. And that's gonna be one of the key factors for us, is transportation with our students. Because buses only hold so much, and if you've ever been on a school bus, you know social distancing is not what they were made for. So we have some guidance from the DOE, from the CDC, regarding what and how we work with transportation. We'll get into that here in a little bit. We also asked, would you support the recommendation for faculty and staff to wear masks in the classroom? Almost 57% said yes, and 43% said no. These were parents. We asked about if masks were recommended for students upon re-entry. Would you send your children to school? 56.5% said yes, 43.5% said no. These kinds of responses are what drove our decision in putting our recommendations together. We also sent similar surveys to our teachers and support staff and asked, how likely are you to return to work if we open a schedule in a traditional full-day format? 76.3% said very likely, 21.8% said somewhat hesitant, and 1.8% said not likely at all. This was based on 165 staff members, teachers, and support. We also asked them, would you support recommendations for faculty and staff to wear masks upon re-entry? 55.5% of the teachers said yes. 71.2% of support staff said yes. 44% of teachers said no. Almost 29% of the support staff said no. We also asked about supporting the recommendation for students to wear masks upon re-entry. Teachers, 45% said yes. 68% of support staff said yes, 55% of teachers said no, and 32% of support staff said no. We asked these questions along with this next slide that I'm going to show you to kind of gauge what we need to look at as far as how we're going to reopen school. As of this morning, or about noon today, I should say, the data came in from the Indiana State Department of Health regarding the demographics for positive cases. In the month of June, there were only 3 positive tests in Vermillion County, and 1 this past weekend. As I said earlier, 813 individuals have been tested, of which 14 tested positive, 1.7% positivity rate. When you compare that to the state, over 500,000 have been tested, 48,000 being positive. That's a 9.2% percentage. And what I did for Vermillion County was break it down by age groups. The Department of Health gives you that. And you look at it, this most recent one this past weekend was of that 0 to 19 age group. The rest are adults. And you can see the scattering from there. One thing I'd like to also bring note, just looking at area counties, as I said, we're at 1.7% positivity rate. Park County is 2.7%. Vigo County is 3.4%. Clay County is 3.5%. And the 7 counties in the West Central region, including Warren, Fountain, Vermillion, Park, Vigo, Clay, and Sullivan, when you add those 7 counties together and look at the positivity rate, you're looking at 3.2% compared to 9.2% of the state, entire state. So our region, we're doing okay. I'm not going to say we're doing great, but we're doing okay as far as the number of positive tests that are coming out. So what does that mean, and what does that look like going into our reopening? We're looking at a low spread at this status at this point in time. So schools are going to open, kids are coming back on August 10th. We're going to look at it in a traditional 5-day period. We're going to look at providing a virtual learning option for those students and families who are affected in one way or another by the COVID-19. We are looking at staggered dismissal time, starting and dismissal times. Elementary schools will start at the same time they always have. We're going to push back the secondary schools, the middle school and the high school, 30 minutes. This is going to help us with the transportation component. We're going to run double routes in the morning routes in the afternoon, and Michelle is just anxiously awaiting the start of that because that just means a little bit more fun for her and her bus drivers. But we're going to implement preventive practices and additional proactive processes and protocols in all our schools. The principals have been working on those, and they're going to be getting those out to their staff pretty quickly. We wanted to wait till after this meeting to make sure we did receive board approval before moving on with that. But this is what the school day is going to look like for the elementary and secondary schools. We're still going to have, I know, if you look at the reentry plan in the that's on the website, hopefully it's been changed by now, maybe not, but there was one glaring issue that for whatever reason we missed, and that was we're still going to have the early dismissal Friday, so we can bank those times to allow for staff professional development every month, so those will still be intact. The big change here is the secondary student school starting time is going to be 9 o'clock at the middle school and high school, and it's going to be dismissing at 4 o'clock. So the teacher contract time at the middle school and high school, although it's still 7.5 hours, it's 30-minute later start than it has been in the past. With regard to traditional reopening with mitigations, we had to look at defining self-screening, preventing sick students and staff from attending school. And this is a key point for us. And this is where we need everybody's help, both at home and at school. If you don't feel well, stay home. Whether you think it's COVID related or not, stay home. Get well, come back. You know, we have to revisit our attendance policies with regard to this pandemic, and we have to loosen it up a little bit. And if you were like me when you were in school and you just didn't feel like going to school, Mom, I don't feel good. When you know darn well you did. You just didn't want to go to school. Well, this brings a whole new issue to it. If Johnny comes to Mommy and says, Mommy, I don't feel good, Mommy, take his temp, kind of check for some things. We're going to get that information to you. It's out on the CDC website. We'll have it on our website as well. All the signs to look for, all the symptoms. Be extra cautious. We can't afford this to say, you're okay, go to school. You'll get a break. Give them some Tylenol and go on. That doesn't cut it anymore. We have to make sure that they are fever-free without the use of medication, Tylenol. We need to provide options for taking care of those who can't attend school until they can. We need to promote good hygiene habits. And we need your help there again, both at home and at school. Washing your hands, coughing into your cup. You know, all those things that we all know about, we've just been very lax about dealing with. We need to make sure that our students and our staff come into a safe and healthy environment. Our staff are going to increase the cleaning and disinfecting and high-touch surfaces. They've already been doing a great job this summer of really doing some extra deep cleaning in our buildings. I would almost venture to say when school starts, our schools will probably be as clean as they've ever been. And you have to remember, we're looking at 5 months between the time kids were in school back in March to when they come in here in August. Our kids have never had that long of a time off. Our staff have never had that long of a time off. There's going to be a big adjustment coming back in. We are looking at recommending that all students and staff have in their possession either face masks or shields, some type of facial covering. And they are being required to wear them during transition times. And when we talk about transition times, we talk about any time they're not sitting in their seats in their classroom. If they're out in the hallways, if they're going to the restroom, if they're going up to sharpen the pencil, if they're going up to talk to the teacher, anytime they're up out of their desk, for whatever reason, they're out moving around, some type of facial covering must be in place. We want to maximize social distancing as much as possible and to avoid large group settings when and where possible. You know, when you're talking high school, you're talking parking lots, and middle school, high school, you're talking common areas, the before school and after school things. You know, we just have to ingrain into our students the fact that when it's time to go, it's time to go. Don't hang around with your buds and all that, just, you need to go. We can't run the risk of allowing large groups to gather. We are going to constantly teach and reinforce good hygiene. We're going to provide hand soap and hand sanitizers throughout the school. When you come in the main entrance, there's a wall-mounted hand sanitizer right there. And there'll be one by the restrooms, and there'll be one all throughout the buildings. We put in a lot of those wall-mounted hand sanitizers during the summer. Signage beyond belief. If you can read, you're going to find a sign to read. We've got a number of copies of the signs that are going to be posted around our buildings up here on the front for you to take a look at before you leave this evening. Cleaning and disinfecting frequently touched surfaces is going to be the norm. Allowing students and staff to bring hand sanitizer from home. When we put this on there, we didn't have the idea that we had a donation of, if you see that little bottle on the ledge there, that's 80% hand sanitizer. We have enough of those bottles for every student in our school corporation, and then some extra. Those were donated. With the understanding that if you need refills, they will provide gallon jugs of refill that we can refill for the students and staff at no cost to us. I thought it was pretty amazing. We are going to ensure all ventilation systems are fully operational with increased circulation of outdoor air as much as possible without allowing the humidity factor to come into play. We're not doing it right now because it would just absolutely melt everything in the buildings, but once this heat wave gets past us, hopefully sooner rather than later, those ventilation systems will be opened up a little bit more. And again, the deep cleaning of schools prior to the start of school is already in place. Now, when we talk about self-screening, this is huge for us. We want self-screening done at home before the kids leave to go to the bus stop or head to school. Parents, it's real simple. Check with your kids before they leave for school to make sure they're feeling well. If they need to have their temperature taken, take their temperature. The one thing that we don't want to have happen is that false okay by slipping them some Tylenol, and that they have a slight fever. The CDC guidance is 100.4, they need to stay home. And if they're like 100.3 or something, yeah, they're okay. That's pushing the envelope a little bit. We want to make sure that parents, staff, and anybody coming, any visitor that comes into our buildings will be provided with this information. We're going to have it on our website. We're going to have it in our buildings. We're going to have it in our mailers. We're going to overindulge you with information about the symptoms and what to look for and how to self-screen. Many of you have probably already seen more than you want to see, and we're going to send you even more. But we have to do our due diligence to make sure that the word gets out. We will provide e-learning for students excluded for sickness. That's on those short-term things. Now, I need you to understand there's a difference between our e-learning platform and what we're going to recommend later in the board meeting about our virtual school platform. Virtual school is for kids who are not going to be coming into our schools. E-learning is for kids who are coming into school who, for some reason or other, either by themselves or somebody in their family or close to them, has been impacted by COVID-19 and they need to be excluded from school for a short term or maybe even a little bit longer than a short term. We will provide e-learning packets for them on an individual basis. Virtual school is a whole different ballgame. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Exclusion. I had a few folks ask me about, you can't exclude my kid from school. Well, it's not expulsion. It's not disciplinary, it's health. It's health and safety. Parents and students and staff will be trained to recognize the COVID-19 related symptoms. I mentioned the fever, cough, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, chills, shaking with chills, muscle pain, headache, sore throat, loss of taste or smell. These are all symptoms of COVID-19, and if students and or staff have those symptoms, they will be excluded from school if they test positive or exhibit one or more of those symptoms based on the CDC guidance. It's not going to be held against them. It's just for their safety, for their health, and for yours. When you return from exclusion, once a student or staff member is excluded from school, they may return if they satisfy the recommendations provided by the CDC. Untested persons who have not yet received a test or disproving the presence of COVID-19 but experience the symptoms may return if the following three conditions are met. They have no fever for at least 72 hours, 3 full days, without the use of medication. Again, key component, do not count any time that you provided time. If you have other symptoms improving, or at least 10 calendar days have passed since the symptoms began. If they've tested positive and are symptomatic, persons may return under the following conditions. They no longer have a fever, again, without the use of medication. Other symptoms have improved, and they have received 2 negative tests at least 24 hours apart. If they've tested positive and are excluded, but asymptomatic, and have not had symptoms but test positive, they may return when they have gone 10 calendar days without symptoms and have been released by a healthcare provider. A lot of information to digest there, but the bottom line is they have to be assured that they're not sick, that they don't have those symptoms. Shifting gears a little bit, transportation. I'm going to say something here at the top of this that I know some people don't agree with, but it's the law. School transportation is not a right, it is a privilege. We don't have to provide transportation. Some school districts do not. Some school districts this fall are limiting severely their transportation. What we are asking for is parents who can drop their kids off at school to please do so, to help ease. We have some of our buses, Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, 66, 70 passenger buses that are filled to the brim. And that's part of the reason why we're separating the elementary and middle and secondary routes, so that we can ease that burden on those buses. So if they're going to ride the bus, the first thing we want to make sure is before they leave that house, that you've screened them as parents that and have verified in your own mind that they're feeling well enough to come to school. But because of the way the buses are situated, and there's little to no social distancing on a school bus, students are going to be required to wear face covering while on the bus. If they're going to ride the bus, they need to have a face covering. There will be hand sanitizer provided on the bus for students upon entering the bus. They will have assigned seats, and if there are siblings that ride the bus together, they may sit in the same seat together. That is acceptable. Dr. Box has reiterated that numerous times on the governor's briefings. As we've mentioned, we're going to have staggered routes, one for elementary, one for secondary. Buses will be cleaned and disinfected after each route. At this time, we are limiting field trips. We may need to cancel some. Depends on the number and where they're going and that's going to be highly scrutinized starting this fall. Buses will be aired out when they're not in use. Simple as that. We can do those simple things. We'll be okay with transportation. When entering school buildings, again, we have those wall-mounted hand sanitizers at all entrances. Signage throughout the buildings to communicate how to stop the spread of COVID-19, including symptoms, preventive measures, good hygiene, and other important protocols, school-related. We're establishing protocols for visitors right now. Under the green category, we're looking at limited access. And folks, the best way to put it is we're in a difficult time right now. I don't think there's anybody that's not going to agree with me on that. And the thing about it is we just can't have somebody coming in just to visit, okay? If you're coming to school, you must have some official business to take care of. You know, one of the things, especially at the elementary levels, is for parents to come and eat lunch with their kids. Folks, I'm going to discourage you from doing that for a while until we get this under control. If we happen to go to yellow, that limited access is going to turn to restricted access. Emergency reasons. We just can't afford to have people coming in and out of the building all day long. And I know that goes against every fiber in our system, because we want to be a very welcoming school corporation. We want to be able to allow the community to be able to feel free to come to our schools. But the conditions that we're in today, we can't take that risk. We have to limit unnecessary large group gatherings. And for the high school, middle school, we may look at increasing entry points so that they're not crowded in one spot coming in all the time, or leaving for that matter. This has been kind of an interesting topic, food services. We want kids to wash their hands before and after meals. And we'll have that hand sanitizer provided if necessary. Our students will receive their meals in disposable plates with disposable utensils. They will not be reused. Meals will be provided in classrooms, homerooms, and other such configurations as deemed appropriate by the schools because of social distancing and availability. Meals will be prepackaged, the grab-and-go type meals. They will be meals that are approved by the USDA for school meal programs. And the one thing that we really have to stress, do not share your lunch. Do not share your drinks. That's as old as time coming to school. Kids swap stuff and share their meals. We cannot allow that to happen. One thing that I want to touch on this, with regard to every school administrator has been working on plans to make sure, and I've had a chance to review those plans yet this afternoon. In our CBA with our teachers, they are guaranteed 30-minute free lunch duty, free duty lunch, right? Yeah, duty-free lunch. That's it. I knew those three words there. And our principals and assistant principals have worked hard to make that happen, and they have all come up with plans that they can assure me and the teachers that there will be that issue. That issue has been taken care of. They will work with their counselors, their supports, their teaching assistants and counselors and others to make sure that teachers get their duty-free lunch. So that's, I feel good about that aspect as well. Transitioning, as I said earlier, means anytime the students are up from their desks moving around, whether it's within the class or outside of the classroom. And if they are, the face coverings are required. Cleaning and disinfecting of the high-touch surfaces will be done throughout the day. The schools are providing traffic patterns, lanes, if you will, to keep students separated. Mr. Schimmel, are you still looking at the one-way all the way around? I can't wait to see that one. It's a one-way lane all the way through the high school, so it'll be interesting. Water fountains will not be in operation. We are looking at having touchless water bottle refilling stations to be installed in the buildings. We're looking at also other options for providing water to our students and staff. With regard to the middle school and high school lockers, the locker pits, or the locker pit here in the high school is off. No students will be using lockers. Middle school, the lockers in the hallways, those will not be allowed to be used. I believe Mrs. Harris and Mr. Williams have provided clear plastic backpacks for all middle school students to use. So that takes care of that issue. Large group gatherings. This is going to be a difficult one for us to deal with. We have to discourage that as much as possible at all times. Before school, during school, and after school. Parking lots, common areas, gym, you name it. We're looking at staggering the schedule for large group gatherings at all levels, whether it's recess, school lunch, you name it. Identify and utilize large spaces for classrooms. Can more than just the PE class use the gym? Here at the high school, we have 2 upper gyms, we have an auxiliary gym, and we have the main gym. So can those all be used if necessary? This auditorium, the cafeteria, and the other buildings. When weather permits, can the classes be conducted outside? Those kinds of things to offset the large group gatherings. One of the big things that we really want to push in this plan is supporting our teaching and learning. And our building administrators are working on implementing standard operating procedures for all schools, providing hand sanitizer. I keep repeating myself, folks, but it's necessary. If I can't drill this into everybody's head, I don't know how it's going to be effective. Cleaning classrooms and high-touch surfaces daily. Limiting physical interaction through partner and group work. That's going to be a biggie for some teachers. Limiting the group activities. Because we've been out of school and only doing e-learning since the middle of March, if you recall, I believe it was 28 e-learning days of school. We have to establish an academic baseline. We need to find out, we can't simply remediate, because we'll never get back to where we were. We may not ever know for a while when we're going to get back to where we were. So we're going to be looking at administering formative assessments toward the start of the school year through our NWA process to gauge where our students are so that we can start to formulate, okay, here's our baseline now, where do we go from here? We're going to be conducting frequent meetings with our teachers to identify where students are academically and how best to meet their needs. We're going to provide additional instructional supports for at-risk students who are not graduating, who may not graduate on time. One of the things that we've had already in place is our APEX alternative ed program. We may need to expand that at some point here once we see where our kids are. We need to address the issue of students with disabilities and students who struggled last spring during our shutdown with our e-learning platform. We need to make sure we do everything we can to get our kids where they need to be. We need to identify essential concepts and skills at each grade level. We look at, especially our younger students, K through 2, and I'm sure we could argue K through 12 for that matter, but those kiddos missed out on some key learning opportunities in those early grades. And so we have to look at those concepts, those skills. What is it that we need to really focus on to get them where they need to be? And again, to not increase the burden on our teachers, we're looking later this evening to recommend a virtual learning concept through a company called Edmentum. And it's different than e-learning days, and it's keeping our students enrolled in South Vermillion. They don't go off to some faraway virtual academy or You know, we're not talking homeschooling, we're talking a school, but it's a virtual school within the South Main school community. One of the key components, I've been saying that all night, they're all key components, but our vulnerable population, both students and staff. You know, when we looked at the surveys and those results, we knew there were some people that, you know, those were anonymous surveys, but we could see there's people that are truly afraid to come back to school because of health conditions that they have, and we need to be able to work with them. Those surveys were conducted to gauge the intentions of families leaving or having their children return to school, staff returning to school. And if they didn't feel comfortable because of this pandemic, what could we do for them? And that was this virtual learning platform. And the thing about that is, what we intend to do, should this virtual school be approved this evening, is provide that for at least this year for students affected by the pandemic at no cost to them. Now, typically, this type of situation will cost the student anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000 a year. But because of the COVID-19, because of the cost savings that we have and the CARES Act funding that we have, we feel very confident we can be able to provide that opportunity to our students who are truly affected by this pandemic, not just because they don't want to come to school, but because they want to come to school, but due to health concerns, they can't. So we're providing that for them. All through this, we're also looking, consulting with our legal counsel to offer special accommodations for staff members who are part of that vulnerable population. What we need to do, Families First Coronavirus Relief Act. Did I say that right? I got it. First try. So we're looking at that as well. So the big question now comes to us: what happens if a student or a staff member while at school becomes ill? What do we do? And how does that affect everybody else? So we identify an isolation room in every building to separate anyone who exhibits COVID-like symptoms. Through the CDC guidance, the State Department of Health guidance, our local health department guidance, the use of standard and transmission-based precautions when caring for sick are in play. We established procedures for safely transporting any student or staff who is sick, transporting them home or to a healthcare facility, and notify the local healthcare officials, staff, families immediately a possible case while maintaining confidentiality. We can't not do anything, but at the same time, we have to maintain confidentiality. We have to notify the DOE as soon as we know we have a positive case. We have to close off all affected areas used by the sick individual and do not use them again until after the deep cleaning, disinfecting has taken place. We need to advise the sick staff members and students not to return until they have met the health department criteria to discontinue home isolation, which we referred to earlier. Working with the health department, they will inform those who have had close contact to a person diagnosed with COVID-19 to stay home and follow the State Department of Health guidance if symptoms develop. If no symptoms are developed, follow the appropriate guidance for home quarantine. So that's the big piece for us if it happens while they're at school. Now, the next piece I'm going to go into, I'm going to kind of buzz through it a little bit because it deals with extracurriculars and athletics, and that all started today. Summer activities for athletics, and this includes, we had an update on the guides here. This also includes other extracurriculars. We're talking band, we're talking performing arts, all those other extracurriculars. Coaches, parents, and athletes will be trained on the proper preventive procedures. Coaches and athletes will be trained on the proper procedures in the weight room. Coaches and athletes will be required to sanitize hands immediately upon entry to the facilities. They will be required to have their own personal water bottles to use, no sharing. Each athlete will acquire a clean hand towel after sanitizing hands. Towels and sanitary spray bottles will be used to wipe down equipment in the weight room after they use it. All equipment will be properly wiped down after use. Athletes will shower and wash their workout clothes immediately upon returning home. Locker rooms, at the present time, locker rooms are not to be used. They don't shower here. They don't use locker rooms. They get out of the car, they go to practice, they leave, and go back home. The focus on summer athletics is strengthening and conditioning, fundamentals, and efficient time and travel. Strength and agility development will be conducted in the weight room, auxiliary gym, and or outside. Athletes will be grouped by teams organized by the head coach. They will hold practice times according to the IHSA guidance, and Mr. Terry has worked very hard at getting that information to the head coaches. I know he's had a number of meetings with them. I sat in on one in particular. You know, I'll be honest with you, it stinks, but this is what we have to do. I mean, we cannot afford not to follow the rules. Obviously, fall sports have a precedent, whereas the winter and spring sports, you know, the interesting thing about it was, you know, okay, non-contact sports, blah, 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 what can we do? Well, the only two sports that the IHSA identified here recently has been cross-country and golf. That they have a little bit more latitude because they're outdoors, they're basically, you know, on their own. So they're not in tune unless they go into the weight room or whatever, that's, they're on their own. Schedule will be developed by the athletic director to maximize facility uses of all teams, and Mr. Terry again has done that. I've seen that schedule, and it looks pretty impressive. Again, the exception of cross-country and golf, athletes and coaches will be able to travel to and from athletic practices and conditioning activities no more than one time on a given day. So what that means is they're not two-a-days. You come once, you stay, and once you leave, you're done for the day. Students, which includes both athletes and managers and coaching staff, attendance will be taken daily at each practice or conditioning activity to support contact tracing if necessary. We need to make sure if somebody does test positive, who they come in contact with, when they came in contact with them, so that they can be advised of that. So it's not just about lifting weights and running plays and all that. It's about getting your temperature taken. It's about getting your hands clean and getting the equipment wiped down and all that. There's a lot going on that we didn't think twice about last year at this time. Kind of summing up what this task force has put together, the areas of our planning include health services. Hannah Hoover, our head nurse, has done a remarkable job of getting information for our school nurses and providing information to our administrators, our task force, our coaching staff, and so on. Facilities with the cleaning and disinfecting, Melanie, kudos to you, Lynn, at the middle school, the elementary custodians, everybody has been working their tails off to make sure that every aspect of the buildings have been thoroughly cleaned. And again, I can't say enough about that. Our transportation, you know, this is a critical piece for us because if you look at, and I don't want to downplay this or make light of it, but when you look at our bus drivers, a couple things come to mind. There's a nationwide shortage of bus drivers. There's a statewide shortage. They're just not there. Here at South Vermillion, we have a full complement of bus drivers, but we don't have substitutes. If we have a bus driver that is sick, Michelle or Bob Anderson, our transportation department mechanic, those are our subs. The other part of that is about half of our bus driving staff is in that at-risk age group. So we have to be very cautious and very specific on that transportation piece, because we can't afford to have sick kids coming on the bus. And that's why we're requiring them when they are on the bus that they have those masks. Food service, Kim Bryant, she's been indoctrinated like you would believe. She's only been on the job as our food service director for about a half a year. And she gets hit after shortly being on the job with the lunch deliveries for our kids during the shutdown, and now the pre-packaging for the upcoming school year. So she's been running pretty hot and heavy on this as well. So kudos to her. I can't express enough about the cooperation between the school corporation and the homes to make sure that we screen our kids daily. We need to look at those at-risk, vulnerable population. We need to be ready for e-learning if it needs to happen. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about the virtual learning platform here shortly. If we want to have a fall athletic season, if we want to have a performing theater production, if we want to have band, we have to be very specific to the details. We're working with Covered Bridge Special Education District on special education issues with regard to all of this. Staff, there's going to be some added training videos for you, and hopefully we're going to get those out here in the next month, not next month, next week or so, excuse me. Along with the normal training, annual trainings that you have to go through, there are a number that are COVID-19 related that we're going to be pushing out to you, and hopefully we can get those to you sooner rather than later, so you can, if you have time to do them now before we come back on August 6th for the staff trainings, get those out of the way ahead of time. Our office is working with regard to human resources, with regard to teachers, administrators, substitutes. I'll be honest with you right now, I'm worried about substitute teachers. We're looking at a couple of maternity leaves right now that we need subs for, and we're not getting much luck. There's that fear. So we're working on that. The last thing there are the financial impact, the fiscal impact. That's huge. Luckily, we've been able to utilize the CARES Act pretty well. We're pushing out some ideas for the FEMA, and hopefully those will get approved. One good thing about the shutdown in the spring, we were able to save some money in our operations fund. So that's helped us. My office in the superintendent building down the driveway there starting to look like a warehouse. The disposable masks, the face shields, the hand sanitizers. I mean, I've got boxes and boxes, and we're still getting more. A lot of them have been donated by groups, and we're continuing to get donations in almost daily. So we feel good about where our supply chain is at this point. The county health department has been huge, providing some of those supplies for us, and we can't say thank you enough to everybody who's helped out with that. So those are the areas that we're really focusing on. A couple last minute things here. And this has been something that, okay, it's always been in the back of my mind. Okay, we put this plan together. I think it's about 40 pages long, if I remember right. What do we do if and when it happens? Do we panic and say, oh my God, what do we do? Hopefully, we all know what the next step is, and we know the procedures to go through. Follow the guidance from the state and local health officials. I can tell you right now, if I get a call from a principal that says we have a student or staff member that is showing COVID-like symptoms, my first immediate action is calling the Vermillion County Health Department. And then we're going to work together to make sure that we get everything taken care of the appropriate way. If we have to go from green to yellow, what are our contingency plans? What are we gonna look at? How are we gonna handle a higher rate of positive tests in our community? And I think the thing that we have to look at is, okay, if it's not the student, is it the student, a member of the student's family that they come into contact with on a daily basis, and then they're coming to school. So that's where that contact tracing comes into play. One of the things I think is very important for us to be successful in our reopening is those families who are truly affected by this pandemic choose to go the virtual route. We can strengthen our traditional setting even more. But if we can't, there's that potential to close a school, a couple of schools, maybe the entire corporation for a short-term period, or possibly an extended period. This is not, and this won't be the virtual setting, this will be the e-learning setting. And so if we have to close down those schools, we're gonna go hot and heavy on deep cleaning that school to disinfect every potential area there so that we can expedite the return to school. And that's just the overview. I encourage you to take a look at the website, to look at our re-entry plan there. And there's bullet points for every area that I spoke about tonight, and then some. And it's listed in green, yellow, and red. Everything in green also applies in yellow, and then some other things. If it goes to red, it's a whole different ballgame. We're talking potential closure, potential exclusion, all those kinds of things. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Email me, email any member of the task force. Let us know if you have questions, and we'll try our best to answer them. That's the presentation. We have a mic up here if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask.
Are the teachers or the schools corporation going to do temperature checks on the kids and the teachers before school?
Not in the green, but if it goes yellow, that'll be the temperature checks upon entry, yes. If we're in the green zone like we are currently, we'll do the temperature checks if we feel it's necessary, if they show symptomatic issues.
Well,
You might turn it, I don't know if it's on. Oh, there it is.
there you go. My question was, you may have already mentioned it, perhaps I wasn't listening. Was the school safety officers involved in this entire process, the police officers, what they have to do, the things that they go through, and the differences in their daily routines, are they involved?
Not at this time. What we are going to do is, prior to the start of school, we're going to be meeting with Mike Holtkamp, who's the head, he's the lead officer with our SROs, and go over what training that they've had through the Sheriff's Department and other, I believe, state police and other entities that have been that. And then we're going to have those training sessions that we have for the teachers. They're going to be going through those as well.
When you have a situation where someone reports to school they're ill, they might be able to help with something in that
Right.
range or something.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Anybody else? Why don't you, protocol here, why don't you raise your hand and I'll call on you if you want to come up to the microphone. That way we'll have Matt ready. Anybody else? Mrs. Roberts. Hold, I'm sorry.
A little shock there. Sorry. I wanted to prepare a statement on behalf of the South Vermillion Education Association. I would like to thank Mr. Chapman for inviting myself and Sheriff Crockett to be part of the reentry task force. So the teachers at both elementary and secondary levels were represented, as well as the SVEA. Several times over the course of the task force meetings, Mr. West challenged us to put together a plan that we could execute. And I believe that for the most part we have done this. However, this is such an unprecedented time, and under ever-changing circumstances, I kind of described it to someone as you're trying to hit a moving target while on a roller coaster and you're blindfolded. That's kind of what it feels like. But with all of that being said, I feel like we've done as comprehensive a job as possible. But there are some variables that I think we need to think about moving forward. One such variable are the plans that Mr. Chapman alluded to, that each building admin is creating. These plans are day-to-day procedures, protocols that will be executed. As we stated multiple times during the task force meetings, it will be imperative that all stakeholders do their part in order for us to provide the safest possible learning environment within our means for the students and staff. And as all good leaders know, that takes buy-in from those executing the plan. Therefore, the SVEA urges the administration to develop these plans in conjunction and with the input of the teachers who will be expected to execute them. These new protocols will undoubtedly stress our existing substitute situation, as Mr. Chapman alluded to degrees that we haven't seen before. The SVA looks forward to working with the administration through discussion and bargaining to determine new protocols and policies regarding the use of teachers to fill these substitute needs. Undoubtedly, we will be asked to cover classes. And while we are all in this together, it is imperative that consideration of our time to plan and prep lessons, and yes, even just simply use the restroom, is taken into account. When this time is taken from us on a consistent basis, the education of our students suffers, and that is not acceptable to any of us, any of you, any stakeholders in this situation. And last, the variable of the stress that these changes are going to cause and be present on the classroom teachers. The requirements and duties within the plans that will add an already uncertain, that are added to the stress of an already uncertain time. I think it's imperative that we all give grace and support each other during this time as we acclimate to a quote-unquote new normal. We look forward to taking a proactive stance with you to ensure that the best practices are in place to do what's right for our staff, our students, and our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Anybody else? Yes.
Good evening. Thank you guys for working on this plan. I think we were one of the most proactive school corporations around this area, to be honest. I just have one question, and it kind of relates to transportation and looking at the green, yellow, and red. I noticed in the yellow, for the bus drivers, it's required to have a face covering, but in the green, it's not. It's highly recommended. And face coverings protect us from everyone else. I was just curious what the reasoning was for that. Since a lot of our bus drivers are high risk and they can contract it easy.
We had that, and again, this document is a living, breathing document, and it will probably be updated almost daily. One of the things, if you notice on the panel up here, what we didn't have available when we put that in there was the face shields. And what we want to do is working with Michelle and the bus drivers, is to have the bus drivers out on the routes later this month using those face shields to see how they work for them. Because we don't want to impair their vision by any means. The concern with the masks, a lot of our bus drivers have glasses, and some of those masks, especially the disposable ones, really mess the glass lenses up by fogging them up. So we're trying to make sure that, you know, for example, when all the kids are on the bus and everybody's facing forward, and just like a classroom, the bus driver is up in front and take their mask off. Okay, when we get to that yellow, they're on for everybody.
Right.
But we're trying to look at those options for those face shields to help them so that they don't get too worked up on as far as the fogging up their glasses and their line of sight.
Mm-hmm. Shaving cream's amazing for glasses wearers, by the way.
I've heard a lot of new recipes for that.
And then my other question was about the hand hygiene. On the food service portion of this, it is like a recommendation, like before they're eating. It doesn't require it, which I understand why there may not be that requirement in there. How encouraging are we going to be that they wash their hands?
Very encouraging now that the fact that every student will have in their classroom their own private bottle of hand sanitizer.
Okay.
If they don't bring it from home, we'll have one for them.
Okay.
So that again, that's that thing that, tomorrow things may change again because we may have other things available to us that we didn't have today. So we're
And
still
then-
looking at that.
Okay. And then with, will there be training? I know there's going to be staff training. And then there's a blanket statement in this that says there will be training available. And it reads that there will be training available, like maybe to students and parents. Will there be any videos available on the corporation
Yes.
website for the parents that will be friendly to parents and the students and things like that about masks or any of this?
Hannah Hoover and I are working on locating those videos for students and parents to be put on the website. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else? Nobody? Okay. We will close the public portion of the comment period and fall back to board member comment. Board members?
Is it my understanding from presentation, the elementary are encouraged, any classes are encouraged to have outside if they can? Does that mean that they will go ahead with recesses and stagger the recesses?
It will be staggered.
Recesses will be staggered, and there'll be certain areas, depending on the school situation, Central, Main 9, Green Tile will be different, but you're not gonna have everybody out there at once, anything like that, no. It'll be very structured as far as recesses go.
Anybody else? Mrs. Ali?
Details.
I think you're on.
It's on.
Details about the face masks. Students will be required to have face masks. Are we setting the criteria for face masks? Because they really range in quality.
The ideal situation would be to have the masks or some type of facial covering provided at home so they can take home, wash, reuse. We have a growing number of disposable face masks for students and staff who don't have them. We have the face shields, but we have a few folks that have offered to produce those for us, the cloth ones. There's a number of vendors out there that are selling good quality face masks, and they have you can put your school logo or whatever on it. We talked a little bit about that could be a great fundraiser if folks wanted that. You have to gauge the interest there. So there's a lot of different variations to that, but the one thing I think is important is we have something. As far as the disposable ones, if nobody brought face masks to school with them, we would run out in about a week. So you're talking 1,600 plus students, another 150, 200 employees. So, I've got about a little over 2,000 in my office warehouse right now. So, but, if we're gonna put a box, each box contains 50. Each bus is gonna have a box to start the school year out with, because that's gonna be the critical point. Starting school year, we're gonna promote, but somebody's gonna forget. So we have to have those ready.
But to Mrs. Ave's question, we can publish a guideline on what
Oh,
face
yeah.
masks are acceptable between now and the school start. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, Mrs. Ave. Mr. West?
Thank you. I just want to give my kudos to the task force. I was very privileged to be on that task force with a lot of talented individuals that are committed to this school corporation and this community. And I saw how much effort was put into this plan. What's key, and everyone sitting out there and or listening has to understand, the success of this plan is dependent upon all the stakeholders that will work together to make this happen. If we all don't work together, this plan, it just won't happen. Everybody that's in this school corporation, I don't care what role you play, you've got to execute. And if we do that, there's a good chance we're going to be very successful. But that's what's going to be key, and we have to make sure that we do not compromise safety in any form or fashion. But it is quite doable. There's been a lot of discussion here, and we went down a lot of trails and said we can't do those things, but we're going to give it our best effort. So execution is going to be the key.
Thank you, Mr. West. Anybody else?
I like Bruce. It's gonna be up to the parents and up to everybody, and to express it to the children. And then for teachers to do this, how important this is, and how serious this is, and why the rules are put in there now. I know people probably won't like all of them, but we've gotta use them. I mean, I don't care for the mask, but I do it, because I'm old. But I mean, you just gotta follow your rules. It's gonna be rough on the kids, but we'll get through this, and then we'll go back. But don't give the teachers a rough time telling the kids when they tell them to do something. Put the mask on, or put open hands. Just do it for your own safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cool. Anybody else?
Mr. Ring, if I could add one thing.
Sure.
One thing that I forgot to mention early on, the next couple of weeks are going to be very critical for us. The national news has really pushed the point about this last weekend, 4th of July holiday weekend, and what potentially could happen across the country as far as the number of positive cases. So, as I've said all along, this is a very fluid situation. Things could change today, tomorrow, the next day. The next couple of weeks are very critical for all of us. So we'll be keeping a very close eye on how things are starting to shape up heading into the start of the school year. There may come a time that first week in August before school starts that we may have to change our plans. And that's something that everybody needs to understand right away, that too may change before school starts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anybody else? Well, certainly, as I said before, the board is very appreciative of all the time that has gone into this plan in the last month or so. A lot of people have spent countless hours working, developing plans, discussing, debating, maybe. And we appreciate the task force. The board appreciates Mr. West keeping us all informed. This has been an iterative process, but one that we're happy to be here today. I think, everybody has a note of caution, but we're entering some sort of normalcy and getting back to educating our students, getting back to routine, I think, is something that both, I know the administration, teachers, and even students are pretty excited about. So we just want to make sure that we do that in a safe and responsible way. And I think this task force has certainly put the effort into that we asked, so we certainly appreciate that. So unless any other board member has comments, any further comment? Hearing none, we'll close board member comment, and we'll move on to the decision portion of tonight's agenda. First is a resolution, and I'll ask the secretary to read the resolution. Mrs. Crowder.
Resolution of the South Vermillion Community School Corporation adopting reentry plan for schools. Whereas the United States of America and the state of Indiana have faced a pandemic caused by the coronavirus and COVID-19. Whereas Indiana has seen a reduction in the number of COVID-19 cases to the extent that the governor of the state of Indiana, the superintendent of public instruction, and the Vermillion County Health Department, in conjunction with guidance from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Center for Disease Control and Prevention, have encouraged schools to reopen this coming 2020-2021 school year. Whereas the South Vermillion Community School Corporation remains committed to providing a free and appropriate public education to its students in service to our community. Whereas the safety of the students and their families and employees of the school corporation remains a central concern of the school corporation, and whereas the school corporation continues to closely monitor the spread of COVID-19 in Indiana and locally with updates from international, federal, state, and local governmental agencies. Now therefore be it resolved by the South Vermillion Community School Corporation Board of School Trustees as follows. The Board of School Trustees adopts the South Vermillion Reentry Plan, available on the school's website. The plan was prepared and is adopted in an effort by this governing body to balance several important policies. First, the board acknowledges that policies implemented in this plan are intended for the safety of the students, families, and staff, but they are also intended to mitigate, not eliminate, risk. As public health professionals have recognized, no single action or set of actions will completely eliminate the risk of COVID-19, but implementation of several coordinated interventions can greatly reduce that risk. Second, the board recognizes the need for the education of our children in an appropriate educational environment with the public health challenges in the midst of this pandemic. It is important to intend to achieve educational outcomes even in these difficult times. Third, the plan attempts to achieve a proper balance within the limitations of the school corporation's current budgeted resources and staffing, existing facilities, staffing levels, especially in the midst of a documented teacher shortage. The limited resources provided boundaries to what the school corporation can reasonably achieve. Finally, to all the school corporation to be responsive to fast-changing developments, the board authorizes the superintendent to implement changes to the plan consistent with these policies and principles should changes need to be made in responding to new information regarding COVID-19 in our country, state, and community. This resolution, adopted this 6th day of July 2020 by at least a majority vote of the entire board in the public meeting.
Okay, members, you've heard the resolution. I'd entertain a motion. A motion by Mr. West, second by Mr. Gould. Any further discussion? Hearing no board discussion, all members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries 7-0. Resolution adopted. The reuse plan, or re-entry plan is adopted. Okay, second item under the agenda, you heard Mr. Chapman mention the virtual school proposal, so we're going to take that up next. Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Ream. Members of the board, in light of the current conditions surrounding the coronavirus, COVID-19, and the concern for some families with the idea of returning to the brick and mortar setting of school, we're excited to announce to you our recommendation to provide a virtual option for students who are affected by the pandemic. The South Vermillion Virtual School will allow students and families to opt for a virtual setting due to COVID-19 related issues. Students in grades kindergarten through 12 who are admitted into this virtual option will be educated by state-certified teachers through our partners at Edmentum. This alleviates any increased burden on our teaching staff who conduct class in the traditional setting. The Ed Options Academy, known here as the South Vermillion Virtual School, is a partnership that offers in-district virtual programs designed to fit the needs of our schools and the community while serving our students. Please note that this opportunity is for students affected by COVID-19 only at this time. We will constantly monitor the success of the program and possibly expand the opportunities next school year. However, as for now, the cost of students who apply and are admitted will be absorbed by the school corporation this year only as a result of the pandemic. Should the board approve this virtual option, an informational meeting has been tentatively scheduled for next Monday, July 13th at the South Vermillion Middle School cafeteria for interested families. We have developed an information packet for the students and parents that will be provided at that meeting. We plan to open a student enrollment application shortly thereafter. The informational meeting to be followed up with contact by school administrators. The Ed Options Academy, the South Vermillion Virtual School, will work directly with us as a corporation. We will provide a site coordinator who will then in turn work with the building level administrators or designees to assure assignments and attendance are maintained at a level approved. It is important for us to understand that this is not part of our e-learning platform. This is completely different. Students will be required to attend classes daily and to submit work as assigned. I would like to request your approval that the school corporation move forward with the South Vermillion Virtual School and would entertain any questions you have at this time.
If a student decides they want to do virtual school, virtual learning, is it correct that they will be excluded from extracurricular activities at the school?
If they are enrolled in the virtual school, yes. This is because of the reasoning behind it. If they are fearful to come to school during the school day, there should be that level of expectation for extracurricular activities as well, before school, after school, so on.
And it would be a 9 weeks,
At
virtual school the same
At
as
the
online?
elementary level and middle school level will be a 9-week renewal. At the high school, it'll be a semester by semester because of the credit situation.
Thank you.
Dr. Hawkins?
I have a question, Mr. Chapman, and I'm sure you've done this, but I have to ask the question anyway. Have we had ample time to observe key elements of the system we're proposing, that we're prepared to work?
Yes.
The technical challenges?
Yes. In particular, one of the first questions I asked was if they could do this with our students having iPads. The question that came back to me immediately, yes, at secondary, they get back to me on elementary, but they came back with me the next day, iPad, they have the technology so that the iPads are accessible for these programs, yes. In reference to your first part of your question, I've been on the phone pretty much daily with the folks at Edmond and working on this. We put together an information packet, embedding it through them with regard to student code of conduct, expectations for students and parents. They still have to follow the acceptable use of technology form that we have, policy. A lot of those things, they're still South Vermillion students, so a lot of those things we had to blend in with what they expect. So we have a checklist for virtual school readiness that we proposed to those folks, and there was only one other school corporation that had that, or was thinking about doing that, and they liked the idea, so they wanted to use our template for that. So, I said, do we get any kickback or anything?
Sure.
We get a little bonus or something, I don't know, but no, they've been very good to work with. One of the things that I did some digging over the weekend, in the state of Indiana, they're the top 10 virtual schools options that are provided. There's 178 school districts in Indiana that use this platform. The next highest is Apex, and we use that for our credit recovery at the high school. It was 82. After that, the Indiana Online Academy is like 59. So this is the cream of the crop, if you will. And there's different levels of this. The Calvert is the option for the elementary students, and then the Ed Options Academy is for the middle school and high school. The thing I like about this, and some of the other folks have been working with us on this, should this be successful for us, which I have no doubt it will be, the thought of expanding that beyond this year, for those students who just don't like the traditional brick and mortar, will be available at a cost, but there's over 100 different electives that these kids could go into at the secondary level, for example. And some of the things that because of our size we can't offer because of the numbers. So that it enhances opportunities for our kids while still maintaining their status as a South Vermillion student.
Thank you. Then the other question I have was, and the internet access issue.
We're working on that with the governor's grant funding. We've already been looking at purchasing hotspots for our students, and the governor's grant program will definitely benefit that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion. Mr. West, did you make that motion? Yes. Motion by Mr. West, second by Mr. Cool, is that correct? To approve the South Vermillion Virtual School Plan as presented for this school year. Any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, all members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries 7-0. So that concludes the purposes of the special meeting that we held this evening. We will Any comments Mr. Chapman has to make, and then board member comment? Mr. Chapman?
Thank you, Mr. Rick. Very quickly, members of the task force, if you're here tonight, would you please stand? These folks put a lot of time and effort into this, and I personally want to thank you for your efforts. I've talked with a number of superintendents around our area and around the state, and you know, there's no great secret to anyone's reentry plan, with the time and effort and the attention to detail that our task force put into this was by far more impressive than anybody else I've talked to. And they pushed me, and sometimes I got a little frazzled, as everybody that's on the task force will agree to, but it's only because I don't want to be the school corporation that fails this. And I mean, that's just who I am, and I appreciate your patience with me. I appreciate your working hard on this and making sure that we have a plan that will work for the betterment of all our students and staff. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. So concluding the board member comment, first, Dr. Hawkins.
I just want to pass along my thanks to all you folks to put into time, incredible detail on this plan, and it's a plan that I'm sure you've addressed a lot of the issues that will come up, so I applaud your work, not only for the school corporation, but for the community.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins. Mr. West.
I just want to say that it was a enjoyment working with the South Marine staff at all levels. We got a lot of professional people. Sometimes they don't get the pat on the back that they deserve, but I was really privileged to work with these folks, and I want to thank my colleagues on the board for letting me do that. It was fun, and I am really happy that you folks work for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Mrs. Abe.
I agree. I think that you did a great job on this with the task force. I think you've got a Herculean task ahead of you. I think the decisions that, as educators, you have to make all the time, all the time making decisions is going to just blow up. That those spot-on, right-on decisions that'll have to be made right in time is going to be taxing and overwhelming, and it does make me worry about everybody's mental health. And so keeping an eye on that, I believe, is going to be important.
Thank you, Mrs. Abe. Mrs. Hill?
Bonnie stole my comment. That's what I was going to talk about, was the mental health aspect, but just not the students, but the staff and the parents involved. We've all been through a lot with the e-learning and kids being home for 5 months. I'm excited to see us go back and get to some sort of state of the new normal. You guys have done a great job, and we'll see how it goes.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Mrs. Corrado.
I agree with everyone's comments. I just think that what an advantage we have of living in a community like we do, and hopefully we can keep the cases down, and everybody will be diligent in doing everything that they should, so that our children can get the education that they need.
Thank you, Mrs. Corrado. Mr. Cool.
Thank you, everybody who worked on the committee. They put a lot of time and a lot of thought into it. And I just want to say, I pray that this is a good school year, safe school year for all the students, all the teachers. Anybody has anything to do with this school, parents, it's going to be rough on you, but you can do it. Your kids will listen to you. So I just pray that everything will go good this year.
Thank you, Mr. Cool. And I think a few of the other members hit on it, but certainly the primary purpose is education here, but the school provides so much for some of these kids. I know you teachers out there know exactly what we're talking about. It's hard. I mean, it worries me. A lot of these kids have been sitting home for 5 months. We did what we could, the meal program, and I know a lot of you as teachers kept in touch with them, Zooms and everything, but there's no substitute for that interaction. And sometimes in some of these kids, the interaction you get from you all is the most important interaction you get today. So we look forward to being able to facilitate that and getting some, like I said, some normalcy back in these kids' lives. And we appreciate everybody coming together. It's going to be hard work, and but we're here to support you, and thank you for everything you do. Anybody got anything else? Mr. Chapman? I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? We are adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Board members, I do remind you we have